Hello and welcome back again to the African Messenger. For this segment, again, I'm just so excited and happy to be here and to share with you one more time about different topics and things that are happening again. And today, I was just happy to kind of wanted to share with you about culture and domestic violence, and also the relationship between different families, and how those are affected and impacted as they move from one location to the other. Obviously, different places and different people have different cultures and different background and different understanding of what the law looks like. And so today I'm just trying to kind of touch on that topic because it's something that is really has been affecting the community, especially the immigrant community, for a long time, and really has some negative impact on that particular community, in terms of like how they approach life and what they do. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about that. I was reflecting back a few years ago, with an incident that ended up costing another person's life, because of domestic violence and the amount of silence that is put in place. Because again, for cultural reasons and people with different backgrounds, and the unwillingness to bring this topic up for discussion, because it's considered kind of a shameful thing to do, and talk about in many aspects of the I would say of the African culture. There are things that are in some ways tolerated and things that are not discussed openly. Obviously, sex is one of them. That you are not supposed to have those discussions with your parents because it's considered taboo. Mental illnesses, is another thing. Having a problem with kind of like mental illness is a taboo. There's one topic that people don't want to discuss, and for a long time, having been in an academic setting, there's been instances with students suffering from what many would consider and like label ADHD, but again, there's no willingness. There's no that desire to have discussion is not there because that's considered a bad thing, and so you don't want to talk about it because in some ways you would minimize in the community if you were to bring this topic up. Now, those are things for another day. Today, I just want to kind of talk about kind of like problem have to do with relationship and different location where people are migrating to, kind of looking and seeing what's happening in the community. First of all, I just say like how it's really sad that you'll have people suffering within their own families, but again, not unwilling to speak about what they're going through, but kind of fearful of what the reaction is going to be within their specific communities, because no one wants to be isolated. And so I'm kind of taking this opportunity to come and wanted to kind of touch on those things, in some ways, to try and start a discussion and kind of ask everyone to look into their conscience and to see if that's really something that's important that should be discussed. Maybe that's not a taboo topic, but something that should be brought into discussion, so people can start having this discussion and understand how important they are to the well-being of not only families but the well-being of society as a whole, and in particular immigrant communities, especially those coming from Africa. Now, there are places where you have, men are considered in charge of everything, pretty much to the king status, where they charge on their families, in charge of their wives and children, and in some aspects, in some ways, go a little too far. And I'm not saying in some ways, I should say, and there are good men that are out there. There are people who are good out there. But, in most cases, you have situations where people are really committing abuses. But those they're not viewing as abuse because maybe they grew up in places where those are tolerated and accepted as a part of everyday's life and everyday's living, and therefore that's kind of like part of life. It's like eating or taking a shower. It becomes a part of you. You have to do it every day. It becomes routine, and maybe eating all the time is not healthy for you, but you do it because you've been accustomed to that. That's something that you've done for a long time, and so you want to continue doing that. And so part of what is kind of we are seeing, and we've been seeing really for quite some times, part of what the community has struggled with is the issue around domestic violence. Domestic violence not being regarded as domestic violence, because people are coming from different cultures, from cultures where that word does not even exist. Domestic violence does not even exist. It's not part of everyday's life. It is part of everyday's life, but it's not defined as such. It's defined as being a part of the relationship. You know, and most people would always go back to, do you remember that, you know, in sickness and health, in poor or rich, or all those kinds of things. People always go back to that. But I'm just here to say, you know, domestic violence and abuse do not have justification, regardless of how you wanna think about it and how you wanna explain it. They do not have justification. I don't care if someone has been part of a community, of a society that allows it, tolerates it, or does not have a meaning to it, or vocabulary to it, to define what it is. It is what it is. Now, I'm going to be blunt here. Let me just say this once and for all, so you can understand where I'm coming from. It may have been a part of your life, but you're in a different place, and there's a new sheriff in town, and that is the rule of law. That's a new sheriff in town. And this I want a lot of people to start to understand, especially if you're coming into a new country. And this is a land of the free. This is the United States of America. Everyone is treated equal, and regardless where it is, as a human being, anyone who's really smart, anyone who uses their brain in the right way, should understand that violence and abuse, regardless what it is, in what context it is should not be acceptable. It doesn't have anything to do with culture, because I know even in those cultures where these things do not have definitions, where these domestic violence doesn't really exist, it exists in action, but is not really defined, or there's no punishment for it. Anyone with a good sense of humanity and understanding that you need to do unto others as you want to be done for you would understand that that should not have a place. You know, abuse should not have a place in any relationship. Because if you don't want to be abused and they do not want anything harm to come to you, I don't see how you would tolerate or even want to harm somebody else. I mean, this is like common sense, something that should be there, that people should understand. Now, if you don't understand it and you just come into a different culture and you just move to the United States, I'll be the first one to tell you that you need to watch out. You need to be careful. Not only you need to be careful, but I would just say straightforward and in your face, you need to stop. Not to stop because the lawyer is going to come after you, but you need to stop to understand that nobody else deserves to be hurt or to be harmed. Nobody deserves to be abused. I mean, there's no place for it. And so the sad part is, there's not that many voices of people who are willing to speak against it. You know, everyone is fast rushing to blaming the woman for being rebellious and so on. And I'm not saying there are no instances where you have, spouses who are rebellious. There are instances for that. But, that should not be substituted. It should not be an excuse for every abusive situation that is being seen. It shouldn't be that. That should not be the case. That should not be substituted for that. If abuse is taking place, people should be willing to talk about it, speak about it. Now, I understand the respect, again, in the community, and the respect for, for marriage and relationship and family well-being and so on and so forth. But when is enough when is enough? You know, like when do you say, okay, this now has crossed a line? You know, is it when somebody has died? Is it when somebody has been beaten so bad they can't recognize themselves anymore? You know, when is enough? It's a question, and it's a question to ask ourselves. We have to know. You need to have to know. Everyone has to know. We need to know. We all respect culture, and I think it should be respected. But not everything about culture we take into our lives. Otherwise, we wouldn't be human beings. We wouldn't be evolving. We wouldn't be trying things. We wouldn't be bringing things into our lives. Because the way you were 5 years ago is not how you are today. The way you are back from where you come from is not the same person you are. I'm sure in some ways you've incorporated something in your lives that were not part of your lives before. And that's really good because you learn. We learn from things, from experiences, from life, from our friends, from family, from everyone. We learn a lot of things. We learn a great deal. And so I want you to understand that you have something to think about as you go through life. You have to understand that there are so many things that are happening in the community, and the community had to be willing to talk about these things, to bring them forward, and to have these conversations because they're really important and crucial to the well-being of lives being affected by abuses that are taking place, and there's a lot of people being hurt as a result of that. And the most unfortunate thing is the people being hurt are mostly children and women being hurt for that. And so I really can't understand. I can't stand. I understand reconciliation. If someone is willing to stop the abuse, it's great to do reconciliation. It's really important. But when this thing is not stopped and it continues back and forth and so on and so forth, there comes a time when the community needs to start having these discussions. They're really important for the well-being of the community, but also the well-being of society, that we're having this conversation to also help the people committing those abuses to understand that it is not to try and hurt them. It's not to try and hurt their families, but it's try and help them understand that what they are doing is not right, that they are doing the wrong thing. The purpose is not to divide families and to break families, but is to help the person abusing, because as I mentioned before, maybe they have no idea they're committing abuse because they come from a culture where these are they're not tolerated. These are part of everyday's living. Again, like I say at the beginning, that should not be the case, because I know even in those cultures where in some ways, you know, beatings are allowed, you know, kind of beating your spouses and everything else. They are good people of good faith. People are still doing good things. There are people who are still caring for their spouses and their children. They understand that if I do this, it's going to impact my family and it's going to affect them. And so the thing is, so when you're doing this thing is, you have this conversation with that person, and you help them realize that it's not okay. And so the purpose is not to try and hurt them. The purpose is try and help them understand that they may have done it before, but it's no longer okay. Not that it was okay back then, but that it was wrong, but maybe they didn't know, but now they need to know, because now, like I say, there's a new sheriff in town, there's a rule of law. There's a law that is in place that specifically define what abuses are and what the consequences of that of those abuses are. Now, if someone understands this, they're gonna be active, and if they accept to be taught, to learn, to be helped, then you have healthy communities, and you have healthy families, and you have a healthy society. But if people are not willing to do that, if the community is not willing to have these discussions, these things are going to continue to happen. Maybe somebody is going to lose their lives over this, and so on and so forth. And that's something that we are trying to avoid, that should not be taking place. So I just want you to think about that for now and understand this is a new place. It's a new culture you came with. And there's a rule of law in here that everything that you do has got consequences, and that you're going to end up paying for what you are doing. And so we need to have these conversations and make sure that they are being fruitful and have a positive impact on the community and help the community at large as well as society at large. I'm really happy to have this conversation. I don't think this is the end, but I'll continue to have this conversation. I thank you for tuning in again to the African Messenger. This is your host, Mr. Glory Ngazao, thanking you again and wishing you good luck on this beautiful Sunday. Until next time, I wish you good luck. Thank you so much again for tuning in and for being a part of this special section. Thank you.